What if I told you the Roman Empire didn't fall because of swords, spears, or barbarians? What if it fell because of money and because the people in power learned how to fake it? They called it reform. Historians call it debasement. But in reality, it was the world's first quantitative easing experiment, and it ended in fire. Rome printed its way to oblivion. Think about your paycheck. Prices go up, but your money buys less every year. You work harder, but somehow you're falling behind. Inflation feels endless, unstoppable, almost engineered. Now imagine living in Rome in the year 250 CE. You'd feel the same thing. Bread that cost 1 coin last year now costs 10. Soldiers demanding higher pay. The government promising stability while secretly melting down the economy itself. This isn't just history, it's a warning, because the playbook hasn't changed. The Romans discovered the power to create money from nothing, and every empire since has copied the trick. So before you scroll away, ask yourself, are we living through Rome's final chapter all over again? Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're tired of the official stories and want the unfiltered truth about how money really works, hit that subscribe button. Because by the end of this video, you'll see history doesn't repeat it, compounds interest. Rome, wealthiest empire in human history. Roads stretching from Spain to Syria. Gold pouring in from conquered lands. The denarius, pure silver, was the global reserve currency of its time. If you had a Roman coin, you could buy anything, anywhere, but that prosperity had a hidden cost. Empires are expensive. Armies, grain subsidies, luxury imports, the spending never stopped. So Rome turned to its oldest addiction, debt. Every emperor promised stability, but to pay for it, they borrowed against tomorrow. They taxed the provinces dry. They borrowed from the rich. And when that wasn't enough, they changed the very meaning of money itself. Sound familiar? By the 1st century CE, Emperor Nero faced a crisis. The treasury was empty, the people restless. So he made a quiet decision: melt down the coins, mix in cheaper metals like copper, and remint them with the same face value. He called it innovation. We'd call it inflation. Over the next 2 centuries, the silver content of Roman coins collapsed from nearly 100% to less than 2%. Think about that. A 98% drop in purchasing power. By comparison, the US dollar has lost about 97% of its value since the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. Sound familiar? The Romans didn't have central banks. They had emperors. But the result was the same: a hidden tax on the population. Every time a new coin entered circulation, its metal was worth less. But prices went up. Merchants demanded more coins for the same loaf of bread. Ordinary Romans couldn't understand why their money was dying, they just knew life kept getting harder. And when the rich caught on, they stopped trusting the currency altogether. They hoarded gold, land, and real goods, just like today's elites do with real estate, stocks, and art. The poor, they were trapped, paid in worthless denarii, drowning in taxes, watching their savings evaporate. Rome began to split financially, socially, spiritually. The elite built palaces, the middle class vanished, the poor relied on government grain handouts to survive. Sound familiar yet? And here's where the rot went viral. Once Rome normalized fake money, every emperor after Nero had no choice but to keep debasing it further. Stopping meant economic collapse. Continuing meant slow death. They chose slow death. By the time of Emperor Caracalla in 215 CE, the empire doubled the soldiers' pay, but the coins they received were barely coins at all, just tokens of faith in a system that had already failed. Rome had discovered the ultimate political drug: create money, delay, collapse, repeat. And like every addict, it didn't end well. But who made all this possible? Who turned fiscal recklessness into an actual system? His name was Gaius Fulvius Plautianus, Praetorian prefect under Emperor Septimius Severus, a bureaucrat, not a general. a man who understood that power wasn't in the sword, it was in the mint. Plautianus quietly restructured the empire's financial core. He centralized the mint under imperial control, sidelining the Senate, and introduced mass production of debased coins. It was the birth of fiat currency. The brilliance and the horror of his system was psychological. The coins still looked Roman. They bore the emperor's face. They weighed roughly the same. But their soul, the silver, was gone. And once people accept a symbol in place of substance, you can control everything. Rome's elite families grew richer than ever. They bought loyalty with worthless money. They paid soldiers to suppress revolts caused by that same worthless money. It was a perfect circle of illusion. But Plautianus didn't act alone. There was another name, buried deep in the records, a man historians almost never mention, yet whose decisions lit the fuse that blew the Roman economy apart. You won't believe the name. The receipt is wilder than you think. The man was Emperor Diocletian. His reign from 284 to 305 CE was Rome's last desperate attempt to fix the unfixable. By then, inflation was spiraling out of control. The silver content of coins had fallen to less than 1%. A bag of wheat that once cost 1 denarius now cost 120,000 denarii. Yes, you heard that right. 120,000 times more expensive. So Diocletian did what modern leaders always do when the money dies. He doubled down on control. He launched the Edict on Maximum Prices, a massive wage and price control system covering over 1,000 goods and services. It outlawed raising prices. It criminalized inflation itself. The penalty? Death. Imagine your local grocery store owner being executed for charging more for milk because the government printed too much money. That was Rome, circa 301 CE. The result? Markets froze overnight. Farmers refused to bring food into cities. Black markets exploded. The government called them criminals. The people called them lifelines. To fund the bureaucracy enforcing these controls, Diocletian needed even more money, so he created a new tax system, measured not in coins, but in labor, property, and produce. Congratulations! The Roman Empire had invented income tax, property tax, and sales tax all in one. The empire was becoming what economists call a command economy. But underneath, it was pure panic. The government could no longer trust its own currency, so it turned to forced labor, confiscation, and propaganda. If that sounds abstract, let's quantify it. Asterisk, between 200 and 300 CE, Rome's money supply expanded by roughly tenfold. Asterisk, wages lagged behind by over 90%. Asterisk, military spending consumed 60-70% of total government revenue. Every time Rome minted new coins to pay the army, it devalued the existing ones even more. Soldiers demanded higher pay, forcing another round of debasement. It was a feedback loop of doom, the ancient equivalent of the modern debt spiral. Sound familiar? Think of 2008. Think of 2020. Quantitative easing. Trillions printed overnight to stabilize markets. The mechanism is identical. The labels changed, the math didn't. Rome's emperors were the first central bankers. Their liquidity injections were literal, molten silver poured into molds of deceit. By the 4th century, the denarius had disappeared entirely. Rome switched to a new coin, the solidus, a gold-based currency. But gold was scarce, and only the elites could afford it. The rest of the empire was left to barter. Commerce collapsed. Trade routes dried up. Merchants fled the cities because taxes were higher than profits. Landowners turned their farms into self-sufficient compounds, proto-feudal estates. The middle class vanished, replaced by serfs bound to land and debt. Historians call this the transition to the Middle Ages, but really, it was economic regression. The first great experiment with fiat money had failed so catastrophically that Europe didn't attempt it again for nearly 1,000 years. And yet here we are, doing it again. Let's unpack the mechanism in modern terms. When a government debases currency, it's performing 3 hidden operations. 1. Stealth taxation. Every new coin, bill, or digital dollar dilutes existing savings. Inflation is taxation without representation. 2. Wealth transfer. Those closest to the money source, governments, banks, insiders, spend new money before prices rise. Everyone else pays inflated prices later. Economists call this the Cantillon effect. 3. Control by dependency. As money loses value, citizens depend more on government subsidies, welfare, and jobs. Freedom becomes conditional on compliance. Rome pioneered all three, and the numbers tell the story. By 250 CE, the empire's annual deficit exceeded 500 million denarii. The army alone consumed 500,000 tons of grain per year. And inflation? Roughly 0% over a single century. That's worse than Weimar Germany, worse than Venezuela. Yet we call it ancient history. Let me make it visceral. Imagine working your whole life, saving silver coins for retirement, and one day realizing the government quietly replaced them with copper discs that sparkle but buy nothing. That's not ancient history. That's the playbook of every empire on borrowed time. And the moral decay followed the money. Once wealth creation was replaced by money creation, Rome's work ethic rotted. Speculation replaced productivity. Bribes replaced merit. And when citizens realized they could survive on government handouts, bread, and circuses, the social contract broke. Rome became a spectator society. Its people outsourced responsibility to the state in exchange for comfort. And when the state failed, there was nothing left. It's eerie how exact the parallels are. Today's endless bailouts, stimulus checks, quantitative easing, they're just the new version of imperial debasement. We don't melt coins. We manipulate digits, but the effect is identical. Illusion of wealth, erosion of trust, consolidation of power. Remember, the collapse of Rome didn't happen overnight. It took centuries of financial decay. Each emperor inherited a slightly weaker system and passed it off as strength. Until the very end, citizens believed Rome was eternal. After all, the coin still said SPQR. The buildings still stood. The legions still marched. But money, the bloodstream of civilization, was already poisoned. And that's the warning we ignore at our peril. Rome's collapse wasn't about barbarians at the gate, it was about rot within the vault. The invaders didn't destroy Rome's economy. They collected the pieces. We're told today that our system is different, that digital money, central banks, and monetary policy make us smarter. But history whispers otherwise. Rome debased silver. We debased trust, and trust is the only real currency left. Every empire believes it can print its way out of decline. Every empire believes it's the exception. But every empire eventually learns. You can't fake value forever. The financial collapse of Rome wasn't an ancient anomaly, it was the first domino in a 2,000-year cycle of engineered money and controlled collapse. The same mechanism, debt, inflation, illusion, still runs the show. Only the branding has changed. So as you look at your paycheck, your rent, your grocery bill, remember this. We've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. But maybe, just maybe, we can still change the script. Because if history is compounding interest, the question is, who's collecting it this time? Are we wiser now, or just walking the same path in better suits? Drop your thoughts below. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you want to join a community that sees through the illusion, hit subscribe and share this video. Because the next empire to fall won't crumble from invasion, it'll collapse under the weight of its own currency. And when it does, remember Rome, because they thought they were eternal too.